All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Hey everyone, this is Sean Salmon. Welcome back to the Device Talks Weekly Podcast. It's great to have you here. I'll be on vacation next week, so this is one of my last duties before I take off. So we're going to talk about diabetes in this week's episode. I spoke with Brad Paddock. He's the president and CEO of CeQur. They have an interesting delivery technology that Brad will get into. He's a medtech vet. He's worked at big companies, small companies, Kaifon early on. So he's seen it from every angle. So very insightful conversation with Brad Paddock. And then later on, I'm going to run an interview we used on our Medtronic Talks podcast a few weeks ago. I spoke with Sean Salmon, the executive vice president and president of the diabetes operating unit at Medtronic. Clearly, there's a lot going on at Medtronic in the diabetes space. They have interesting deals with Blackstone. They have a lot of very cool technologies happening. It's been identified as an area where they'd like to see more growth, and we'll talk with Sean about that. So I'm sure you will find some insights in that talk as well. We will have a podcast for you next week, so remember to subscribe to the Device Talks Weekly Podcast so you do not miss an episode. And now it's time to bring in my podcast partner, Chris Newmarker, executive editor of Life Sciences at Mass Device. Chris Newmarker, how are you, sir?
Good to be here, Tom. Happy Friday. TGIF.
TGIF, Chris. As you know, I'm headed on a vacation. So let's just say funny anecdote here. Joke, laugh. Now let's get into the top 5 Newmakers news.
Well, we're not. Yeah, there we go. Hope you have a good vacation, man.
Oh, it'll be fine. Yeah, no, we're just doing a little staying at home, just doing some day trips. Yeah,
staycation.
It's always the romance of going somewhere was certainly there, and I kind of wish we had made plans. But then, as Delta came back or arose, and everything else kind of came to be, I'm kind of happy. We're just keeping it simple, stupid. Not that you're stupid. That's an expression. You've heard of that one, right?
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, we're good. We're cool. We're cool, man.
All right, cool. Workplace issue. Call HR. Tom called me stupid.
Tom called me stupid.
On a podcast.
That's on a podcast. Man, if that is the worst thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah, I know. We both have had interesting weeks dealing with interesting people. So
yes, indeed.
Yes, it's good to speak to a friendly face.
Yes, there you go.
But you do have a killer Newmarker's Newsmakers this week. So
wow.
Let's roll into that. A lot of big names.
So much for a sleepy summertime, that's for sure.
All right,
and right now, Tom, we're in the thick of earnings season again. So It's all rolling out. I'll throw this out. I mean, when we don't, it's amazing, actually, like what Mass Device readers read the most this week was not related to earnings. But overall, Q2 was pretty good. Q2, I mean, I'm seeing, for the most part, medical device companies are beating expectations, at least in the second quarter. It looks like the elective procedures really roared back. I mean, yeah, there's Delta, but I don't know, at least for the device companies, here's to hoping for them, I guess, that health providers have kind of like figured out things enough now about how to like operate amid this pandemic that, we're not, it seemed the sense I got from a lot of the earnings calls was that the executives are saying they don't see us, going back to like the end of elective procedures like we saw last year. I mean, we're just going to have to live with this darn stupid virus.
It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I know Scott Gottlieb put forth the theory that we're kind of mostly through this, that there are a lot more cases than are being reported, and we're kind of maybe a few weeks away from coming out on the other side. So I think I hope so. But I think we kind of have a better understanding of how things will flow. But I say that, and I realize that we don't know what we don't know. I mean, there's things could go in any direction. But good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
That
if we knew the future, we could like bet on sporting events and win, and we'd be, just hanging out at our lake houses now or something. But we don't know the future.
Okay, Biff.
That's right. Hey, McFly.
All right. Well, let's find out what Mass Device readers were reading about. So what's number 5 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers list?
Number 5 on the list, this was very surprising for me. This was like BD acquiring resorbable polymer maker Teffa. And this actually got a decent amount of attention on Mass Device. I think this materials acquisition matters for people in the space. I mean, Teffa has resorbable polymer technology. BD says this polymer technology is going to accelerate the growth of their business around surgical mesh and soft tissue repair. The reconstruction, regeneration. So yeah, like BD acquiring kind of like a resorbable polymer tech that could potentially give them an edge here.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Cool orthopedic stuff. We'll have to learn more about that in a future podcast. All right. What is number 4 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers list?
Now, number 4 on the list, we're moving all the way from materials to like software, AI, in this case, we've got Medtronic, announcing that the FDA cleared 2 of their AccuRhythm AI algorithms. And these are, artificial intelligence that can run with their Link 2 insertable cardiac monitor, and they're thinking this AI is gonna, the idea is this AI is gonna improve the information that doctors are receiving from these insertable cardiac monitors. Hopefully, improve diagnosis and treatments. So some AI to bear.
I think we should take a moment to appreciate that. Our medtech industry, the ones the industry we've covered for so long, now does include these great technologies, resorbable polymer technologies, AI. It's all falling under our medtech umbrella. So this industry is evolving and becoming even more fascinating to cover.
We're exciting. We're doing innovative things, and man, it's a far cry. Like years ago, I did an interview with Mir Imran, who would be really cool to get him on soon. But one of Mir's great claim to fame was he was on the team that made the first implantable cardiac defibrillator. And he was telling me back then, it was like late 70s, early 80s, FDA said it couldn't have any software in it.
Wow.
No software. Had to be totally analog.
Have a little tiny squirrel keeping it going, or what?
Yeah, I mean, something like a little beetle. They found these beetles that could go inside of the ICD.
Wow.
Which was, the ICD was the size of a king pack of cigarettes too. Like he told me, but yeah, I mean, we've gone all the way from like, we don't want software in an implantable device to like, here we are in 2021. Like,
that's right.
Decades later, they're like, oh, we're going to put AI into it.
Yes.
Yeah, why not? It'll think on its own. It's great.
Well, Brad Paddock, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. It's great to hear to CeQur's story. You've got a lot going on. But first, I wanted to find out a bit about your background. You've had a wide and far-ranging experience in medtech with Kyphon and J&J and others. What, though, drove you into the sector, first of all? And then maybe we could walk through some of those career stops.
Yeah, sure. It was one of those dumb luck kind of things. I had a friend whose father was in engineering at J&J at Ethicon Endosurgery, actually, in Cincinnati, and interviewed and found my way into selling laparoscopic instruments in the operating room, and really just absolutely fell in love with the industry.
So you were in the OR, you were there in the front lines?
I was, yeah,
wow.
For 4 years. Loved every minute of it.
It's hard not to find that exciting, I imagine.
Yeah.
So, what was it that sort of put you on the executive track? What started at J&J, and walk us through your career just a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, I started in the OR selling, and absolutely loved it. Loved J&J, but as you know, J&J is a big company. It was still a big company back then, and so I, again, through a friend, stumbled upon a startup in the spine space called Kyphon.
Mm-hmm.
And it had about 15 employees when I joined.
Wow.
I started selling. I was actually the first sales rep with the company, and loved it. Had an 8.5-year run there. Spent the last 5 years running the U.S. selling organization. Built it out to over 400 individuals and nearly $500 million in revenue. So it was quite a wild ride.
Yeah, Kyphon is one of those meteoric stories in medtech. What was that process like, starting with you as a single salesperson and then sort of building out that team? And is that a sort of singular experience, or was there a formula there that you learned that you could apply to other areas?
I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I think in an early stage startup, it's that entrepreneurial sort of spirit that carries you through, and the day-to-day problem solving and sort of figuring out the commercial model, and what does success look like. And I think that while every startup medtech's model is slightly differently, I think it's the learnings. When you're in the trenches, you pick up the signals and you learn how to adapt and navigate. And so yeah, I think that experience has carried with me throughout my entire career.
And what ultimately, Kaifon would go, of course, to be on to be acquired by Medtronic. What was that experience like?
It was incredible. Obviously, we built the company up to a substantial size, and at the time, Medtronic acquired us for a nice premium. I stayed with Medtronic about 6 months. A great company, but obviously, I sort of found myself back into a big company environment, and wanted to get back into something a little more growth oriented. And so I sort of decided to leave and do something different.
Fantastic. And then from Medtronic, you went to Bausch and Lomb, which is certainly part of medical devices, but vision is kind of its own little universe.
Yeah.
What did you learn from there?
I first of all, I love ophthalmology, just a great space, wonderful customers. Warburg Pincus had been a primary investor in Kaifon, and they were the lead investor, taking B&L private. But it was a great opportunity to learn a new segment of the business. I took on greater responsibility as a global head of sales and marketing, and so really cut my teeth more as a marketer there than I did at Kaifon, and helped them turn around their surgical ophthalmology business, and then of course had a nice exit to Valiant Pharmaceuticals.
That's right. That was quite an interesting deal. So let's fast forward a bit now to, I know you'd gone over to Stryker after that. You were the president of the global spine division for Stryker. And now you're here at CeQur. How did this opportunity become known to you, and what did you find interesting about the company?
So first of all, I loved my time at Stryker. Just an amazing company, amazing culture, terrific leadership by Kevin Lobo and many other really talented senior executives. But it was a big business. We grew it to nearly $1 billion in revenue, so it was a big business. But while I was there, I had this inkling to get back to my days at Kaifon and my sort of entrepreneurial startup time. And so I spent, I kind of had feelers out for a number of years, and nothing had really come across my desk that looked exciting until I came upon CeQur. And in many ways, it reflected many of the same characteristics of Kaifon, in that you had a completely revolutionary technology, an enormous market opportunity. I mean, literally one of the largest market opportunities in med device. And then thirdly, just a great board, great investors behind the company, believing in the future of the company. And so that was sort of the trifecta for me, and I made the jump.
Interesting. And one of the powers of a podcast is my realization that I've been saying the company's name all along. I asked you how to pronounce your name, but I've been saying CeQur, and it's CeQur. And I've been typing it all this time and never really thought about how it should be said. So I'll get it right from here on in. So tell us about CeQur and sort of, I mean, it's in diabetes, which is an enormously important space. It's an enormously competitive space. What does CeQur have that will help it compete in this space and to really stand out?
Sure. So it's a little bit of an interesting story. CeQur had been a development company for over a decade, developing a diabetes insulin delivery device of its own. It was a really terrific device, but as you know, if you know, the space is very difficult to develop these types of products in. But they were working hard at it. But in 2018, when J&J decided to divest their med device diabetes business, they had three primary businesses. One was LifeScan, which ultimately sold to a private equity firm. They had a type 1 pump business that they sort of transitioned to Medtronic. And then they had this Simplicity product that was still sort of in a startup mode within J&J and was a bit of an orphan. And because we were sort of a development company, it was a really nice fit. And so we acquired the technology from J&J in 18. And when I joined the company in 19, it was just clear to me that this product had already been 510(k) approved, manufacturing had already been prepared, reimbursement work had been done, marketing work had been done. It was really sitting on the launch pad. It really just needed, sort of an injection of cash and commercial leadership to get it off and running. And so we really shifted the company into a commercial stage organization with a great focus on this product, CeQur Simplicity.
So how does it fit into the treatment continuum for patients? What type of person with diabetes is this used by, and how is it used?
Sure. So as you know, there's type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
In the type 1 space, about a third of people use an insulin pump. That can be in different formats, but they have a pump deliver their insulin. And then 2/3 of type 1 patients use a pen, an insulin pen or a syringe to inject their insulin.
Mm-hmm.
In the type 2 space, it's less than 5% that are on pumps and 95% use pens and syringes. Our product is essentially a wearable pen. That's the easiest way to think about it. So for particularly type 2 patients, injecting yourself 3 times a day, of which there's over 2 million people in the US alone that have to give themselves multiple daily injections. So for those 2 million people to carry their insulin with them, to remember to inject, to do it in a sanitary place, is a huge challenge. So compliance is a huge challenge. And 2, a lot of people don't want to inject outside of the home. They don't want someone to watch them pull out a syringe and a vial and shoot themselves up. It's not something that people feel comfortable doing. And so there's all these, so life kind of gets in the way for people taking their insulin. Well, unfortunately, missing insulin doses is what really ravages your microvascularization in your body. It's what really is harmful to your health. And so this is why people end up with stroke or heart disease, blindness, amputation. It's because they're not taking their insulin when they're supposed to. So it's sort of a very simple, obvious problem, but one that nobody's been able to solve, because how do you solve for having to remember to take your insulin, having to, be sure, leave a dinner table and go take it when you're supposed to. And so our product is a really small little device. It's just about 2 inches long and about 3 or 4 quarters thick. So it's very, very small. And you just wear it on your skin with a little adhesive. So it's just like a little patch.
Mm-hmm.
And when you need to take your insulin, it has 2 little buttons on it, and you just push the buttons. And every time you push the buttons, you deliver insulin to your body. And so the device is worn for 3 days. The patient fills it with whatever insulin they're using today. They don't change what type of insulin they're using. They don't change how much insulin they're using. They just put it inside of this little device. And when you wear the device, you really can't feel it on your body. You can't see it. You can swim, shower, work out. When you sleep with it, you can't feel it when you roll over in bed at night. It's worn on your abdomen. So it's almost invisible. But now you have your insulin with you 24 hours a day, all the time. And so when you need insulin, you can just reach down and click, 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 and you've delivered your insulin.
So after those 3 days, are you removing the entire device or merely removing the contents and putting new contents in?
Yep. You pull the patch off, you discard it, you reload a new one, and you apply it again to your abdomen, and you're off and running.
And how is it piercing or how is it delivering the insulin into the body? How is it piercing the skin, I guess, is my
question.
So
there's a little applicator that's used that applies the patch. It's really not painful. It does have a small needle in it, but it's a very, very, very small needle. So when you when you apply the patch, it uses a needle to puncture the skin, and it leaves a little cannula behind. So you actually remove the needle, and it's left with this really little micro cannula, and the insulin's delivered through that little micro cannula beneath the skin.
Interesting. And how does the patient know how many times to push that button?
Sure. So each click of the button is 2 units of insulin.
Mm-hmm.
So a patient would be prescribed by their physician how much insulin they should take at each meal.
Okay.
And then oftentimes patients adjust. If they have a snack, they may take less insulin. If they have a large meal, they're going to take more insulin. And type 2 folks have learned to sort of understand how much insulin they need to take. So with each click being 2 units, 3 clicks would be 2, 4, 6. I've just delivered myself 6 units of insulin. I don't feel anything. It's painless. It's harmless. And that insulin is just delivered through that really small little tube.
Is there a need or an effort afoot at CeQur to develop some sort of monitor to perhaps even determine how much, maybe more precisely, how much insulin is required by the body?
Yeah. So the device is very precise to begin with. So when you do a 2-unit click, you're getting exactly 2 units of insulin. In the type 2 space, people generally have a fairly programmatic insulin regimen, meaning maybe it's 10 units at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, for example, right? So it's a fairly straightforward, typically fairly straightforward insulin regimen. And maybe it gets adjusted down to 8 or up to 12 or down to 6. So we think in the type 2 space, the device as it is really well designed. In the type 1 space, those individuals tend to be more specific with their insulin. Today, there's some terrific technology with continuous glucose monitoring. There's some amazing artificial intelligence that sort of takes information from your glucose monitor and takes information from your insulin delivery device, sort of has those two combine and talk to each other. And so we are going to add a kind of connectivity to the simplicity that will be an option for patients that do want to have that more sophisticated interaction with an algorithm or with a continuous glucose monitor.
Interesting. Well, you raised some money recently that should help help those efforts a bit. And I think it was April you closed on $115 million for a Series CF, and a lot of great investors in there, including Endeavor Vision and Tandem Diabetes Care and others. Talk a bit about that fundraising. Were you looking for that amount? Were you looking for more? Were you looking for less? What was the process like?
We actually went out to market to raise about $50 million, and that's sort of what we felt like we needed.
Wow.
And to be honest, somewhat unexpected. We got tremendous interest from so many different parties, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that we did a pilot in the back half of last year. So in the back half of last year, we had about 100 patients on the product that were using it sort of in a real world setting. And the feedback we were getting was just incredible in terms of, how that convenience led to compliance, led to a clinical impact. And the patients could see that with very significant drops in their A1C, which is a marker for glucose in your blood. And so it was really, sort of the real world experience with the product that really got investors excited about it. And so as we were going through the fundraising process, we were challenged to say, well, hey, if we could raise more money, what could we do? And could we go faster? Could we scale the manufacturing faster? And the answer was yes. And so we ultimately actually had to turn people away. We actually turned it off at $115 million.
Wow.
We were really fortunate with the quality of the investors that you mentioned that have come into the round. So a really exciting accomplishment for the organization.
And of course, Tandem sticks out as an intriguing corporate investor. What do we see? What should we look into or see into that investment other than just a commitment of dollars? Is there some sort of partnership or other attachments going forward?
Yeah, no, from a legal standpoint, no attachments going forward. That they're purely an investor. Having said that, we've really been getting to know Tandem as a company, and as you know, they're just the growth player right now in the type 1 pump space with their Control IQ and just market leading technology right now in the type 1 space. And they really don't do a whole lot in the type 2 space, which is our primary focus. And so, as we sort of march forward, we're learning from them about the type 1 space. They're learning from us about the type 2 space. Where that leads, I think time will tell. But for now, it's a really just good partnership to learn from each other's experiences.
Terrific. And final question, as we were talking before I started recording, you're moving headquarters from Boston to South Carolina. Manufacturing is going down there. Tell us a bit about your growth going forward.
Yeah, sure. So, this is a device that you need to manufacture, not in the thousands or hundreds of thousands, but in the millions. And that's really a cornerstone of our success. And so we have identified a partner in South Carolina that will help us deliver on that promise and deliver millions of units. There's been significant investment in high-speed automated manufacturing equipment. In fact, our manufacturing line fills up almost 40,000 square feet of clean room space.
Wow.
It's one of the largest fully high-speed automated manufacturing lines anybody's ever seen. I mean, it's really, really remarkable.
No, I'm sorry. You'll be manufacturing these yourselves, or are you working with an outside company?
We're working with an outside contract manufacturer.
Okay, great. Sorry to interrupt.
And so that's busy and underway as we speak. We're scaling that manufacturing now, and then we're building out the sales team. So we've got a half a dozen people in our selling organization at the moment, and we'll be scaling that to probably 20, 30, 40 over the next 18 to 24 months.
And how is this different, drawing from your experience at Kyphon and, of course, all the stops you've had since? But you're with Kyphon, you're selling directly to the surgeons who I imagine who are performing the procedure. This is a bit of a different sell. What's the difference, and what are the challenges in sort of building up the sales team? What are you looking to create?
So our call point, so to speak, is endocrinologists as well as primary care physicians that prescribe insulin. And those tend to be fairly concentrated. So if you look at all the endocrinologists out there, all the PCPs and all those that prescribe insulin, it ends up being about 10,000 physicians that really prescribe the majority of that. So, so we'll probably go ahead and build a sales force of, probably upwards of 50, maybe 100 salespeople that will call on those physicians. And it's a bit of a pharma sort of med device combination sort of sale. It's not a med device into the operating room, but a med device into a clinic and a practice. And really that's to educate and seed the market. But ultimately this will be marketed almost like a consumer good, where you'll hear radio ads and television ads and digital marketing, because as you and I spoke about earlier, people with diabetes are motivated. They're motivated to find solutions to help them live a healthier life. And so when they hear about this technology, it's not so complicated, right? It's literally a wearable pen. And so when they hear about it, they become very motivated to want to find out more, learn more, understand if they're a candidate for it, and really will seek it out. And so we'll have a very significant direct-to-patient marketing program as we scale the manufacturing and can support that.
I was going to ask that. I'm assuming you'll be moving into social media channels and the whole gamut?
Absolutely.
Yep. Excellent. Well, it's great to learn how to pronounce CeQur's name. I've been following the story for so long and mispronouncing it in my head, but always spell it correctly. And I appreciate your taking the time to tell your story. And thanks for being on the podcast.
Hey, happy to. Appreciate the time, and hope your audience enjoys hearing about the product.
All right, Chris Newmarker, what's number 3 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers list?
Well, number three is that NeuroMetrix stock was heading back down this week. I mean, last week the news was that the FDA gave them a breakthrough device designation when it came to the using their Quell pain relief device to treat fibromyalgia. And this could potentially speed up some kind of regulatory approval around this. But yeah, this week they published some study results that it was basically after 3 months there was no difference between the active and sham treatments. The flip side was that I guess subjects with higher pain sensitivity, there was a significantly greater result when it came to active treatment. But still, it was kind of looks like these results were kind of a mixed bag at this point. When it seems the idea of using this this Quell TENS device to treat fibromyalgia. It's not, the optimism seems to be a bit down among investors. I mean, they're definitely still trading higher than they were before the announcement last week. But they were trading around around a few bucks, until last week. Went up over 20. Now their stock's trading around about $15 per share.
Okay, so it's still way up over where they were.
So the investors were kind of last week were yay, when this week they were a bit more we'll see where this goes.
I think we all feel that way, don't we, Chris?
Yeah, that's probably an exact description of
we know how you feel,
times.
NeuroMetrix investors, for sure.
I want COVID to reduce, and I want the smoke to stop appearing outside my window.
That's a great point. I've talked to a couple of folks from Minnesota who are sharing the same unfortunate story about the smoke in the air.
Yes.
They can't go up to the cabin, Chris. They want to go up to the cabin, and they can't go up to the cabin. You get a lot of cabins over there in Minnesota, don't you?
Yes, and everybody's just I'm heading you never hear the exact lake. It's always I'm heading up to the cabin by the lake.
That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know.
It's
we
a
have
lake
10,000 lakes. Try to find me.
That's right. You're not going to find them. They're going to be out there drinking a cold one.
Let us move on to number two. Number two on the Newmakers list.
Oh, okay. So number two on the list, we had more information out about how this huge sleep therapies systems recall is going to affect Philips. Their CEO during their earnings call this week was saying they're no longer going to be taking orders for the systems. As they handle the problem, they're still looking for some kind of authorization from FDA and other regulators for the changes they want to make. And it sounds like the actual effort to fix this problem could take 12 months. Before they're out of the woods with this. It's 12 months where a number of analysts now are saying this could be a big opportunity for ResMed because one headline I read was Needham had a note. They basically said Philips is effectively out of the sleep device market for the next year. Because of this recall, which involves a sound abatement foam, which may particulate and potentially end up in airway passages. It's pretty tough.
Yeah, we'll follow up with ResMed, I hope, in a couple of weeks. And another company I guess to think about would be in your neighborhood, Inspire Medical, which they don't have a CPAP machine, but they have an implantable neurostim device that treats apnea. I'm sure they'll be offering that up as an alternative to breathing in from a machine every night.
Yeah, not all the time that they see a recall this huge that could potentially really change a market.
Excellent. Well, before we get into your big number one, Chris Newmarker, we're going to bring in sort of a kind of a new feature. We're just trying to have shorter interviews with newsmakers, and I haven't told Chris about this, so his response will be genuinely spontaneous. We've talked a bit about ATS and the American Lung Association taking a stance against Philip Morris acquiring Vectora, the medical device company, that creates delivery devices for inhaling medicines. I spoke with Luella Amos. She is a pediatric pulmonologist at Children's Wisconsin, and she's also involved with ATS. And we talked about her take and her feeling about the acquisition. I had contacted ATS, and they introduced me to Luella Amos as someone who would best represent their position. So let's listen to this short interview with Dr. Luella Amos. Well, Dr. Luella Amos, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
It's great to visit with you and to have you provide some additional, I think, important insights on the news of Philip Morris attempting to buy Vectura. And I'd like our listeners to sort of understand from where you're coming. Talk a bit about your clinical specialty and also your work at the American Thoracic Society.
So I am a pediatric pulmonologist at Children's Wisconsin in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I have been staff here for over 10 years. And my interest in this topic has spawned out of the 2019 vaping epidemic in pediatrics and the EVALI epidemic, the lung injury due to the vaping and e-cigarette use. So that has been a pretty passionate topic for me, just because I feel like we are well behind the 8 ball when it comes to the nicotine addiction in our youth.
Talk a bit about that. Well, a little bit of background on what you're facing in that regard in terms of that epidemic. It's not something we've talked about a lot on this podcast. We deal with more with the medical devices, but this is obviously a different kind of health crisis. So what are you seeing on that front?
So the e-cigarette devices are a very sleek and discreet way for our children to get their nicotine buzz. And they entered the markets in 2006, 2007, and then became very popular in the 2012, 13, 14 era. And then in 2018, 2019, we saw a significant rise in the use in adolescence. And then, of course, they discovered other ways to use it, which harmed the lungs and resulted in the lung injury epidemic that we saw in the summer of 2019 before the pandemic.
So you're coming at this as a clinician. You haven't worked with medical device companies before, or have you? Do you have a background there?
I have not, no. We just are familiar with the medical devices that are used for inhalers, the technology used to deliver medications to our patients with lung disease and with asthma. And so that is pretty much the extent of my experience with that. But then we also have seen the harm caused by the delivery systems for nicotine used in our youth.
Take me back to where you heard the news that Philip Morris was entertaining an option to acquire Vectura, a respiratory device company. What was your initial feeling? Were you surprised about that?
Absolutely. I mean, so we received information from the American Thoracic Society. I am a member of the American Thoracic Society. I've been a member for a while now, and I have participated in certain committees, especially in the younger members. I'm trying to get them involved in the society. But yeah, so there was a widespread email sent to us just informing us of this acquisition of Vectura. And so it was just kind of another stab in the heart a little bit. We're just, I was hoping we were making some strides in this nicotine epidemic, I would say, in our youth. And then to see this happening, just kind of, I don't know, it just feels very unethical. Everything about the nicotine addiction in our youth, I feel, is unethical. There's a significant conflict of interest, I feel, with this acquisition.
What are some of the specific concerns that you have about what could be, how Vectura's technology could be used by a company like Philip Morris? So broadly speaking, I feel that Philip Morris right now continues to sell products that harm the lungs. It's essentially producing the poison and will be profiting from that. And that on the other side could potentially profit from the antidote. These are these devices that will be used to deliver medications to the lungs. And so while they continue to be one of the leading manufacturers and sellers of cigarettes and products that deliver nicotine into the lungs, I feel that it is unethical to also profit from the medications or the delivery devices used to treat those illnesses that are caused by cigarettes, by e-cigarettes, by heat not burn, by anything that they are producing to try to, promote this Beyond Nicotine campaign. And your effort to slow or stop that was to work with ATS on a statement essentially saying that. Talk a bit about the statement that was shared, and what do you hope comes from speaking out?
Essentially, I am in agreement with our statement saying that this acquisition has significant conflict of interest. We are essentially anti-tobacco. There's nothing beneficial about tobacco in the lungs. There's nothing beneficial to tobacco in our, for our cardiovascular system. Nicotine, you can't really argue that there's anything good about it. And so any of these devices that they're producing will not promote health. There's really no proof, and there's actually evidence against that. So as long as they're producing these products that are harming people, they can't also profit from devices that help them. You can't do both. You gotta, it's an oxymoron.
Yeah, no, understood. And last, I guess, is as a clinician, someone who likely would be a potential customer for devices like these, someone who at least would be charged with helping to make them available to patients. How would you look toward a device company that had Philip Morris as an owner or an investor? Would that factor in your decision to recommend the use of that device?
It would be a conflict of interest.
Yeah,
absolutely. It would potentially affect my ability to be a member of the American Thoracic Society. It could affect my credibility as a pulmonologist. So I want to be a good model for my patients who I'm telling to stay away from these devices and any tobacco products.
And final question. I do this a lot. Have you talked to other clinicians about that? Do you feel like your opinion is shared by many?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes. Everyone in our office will be behind this.
Well, it's great to hear directly from you, and appreciate the time you took today, Dr. Amos. Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, very interesting thoughts from Dr. Luella Amos. I appreciate her being on the podcast. And now, Chris Newmarker, it's time for a very big number one item on the Newmarker's Newsmakers. Bring us in.
Yeah, number one is we've had Hillrom's stock rocketed up this week off a Wall Street Journal report that Baxter may be in the early stages of talks to acquire Hillrom. It was anonymous sources, WSJ citing people familiar with the matter, but a really, really intriguing possibility here. And the markets were sending up Hillrom stock a lot this week because of it. We're talking on Friday, and I haven't had a chance to hear Hillrom's earnings call, but I know yesterday we had Baxter was doing their earnings call, and an analyst was telling Jose Almeida that of course he knew he couldn't talk about what's going on with speculation, but he asked him to share some thoughts about what they're looking for in M&A, and he kind of laid out that they were, looking for something that, could help them with connected health, that could be a good strategic fit. And I know that, analysts at Needham, we're noting that there's kind of minimal overlap between Hillrom's connected care portfolio and patient monitoring Baxter's hospital care portfolio. So there could, there could be a fit there. They were also saying though they were kind of a bit skeptical that Hillrom would really help Baxter's growth rate, which they said was kind of similar to Hillrom's, but yeah, I mean, very interesting. I mean, we've been talking about this, that, I mean, what's going to be the next big M&A deal, and maybe Baxter Hillrom sounds like it's something to at least keep an eye out. It's intriguing.
Well, Joe Almeida, of course, was CEO of Covidien when it was acquired by Medtronic, so here he is, potentially changing the landscape again, except as the acquirer this time around.
Here you go.
Not afraid to do big deals, that's for sure.
Yep.
Great list. Thanks to our Mass Device readers for giving us the data we need to identify the top stories of the week. And do check out massdevice.com and metaldesignandoutsourcing.com for some Super device coverage. What else what are the other sites people need to visit?
Oh, if you want to find out about catheter delivery systems, we got medical tubing and extrusion. We've got drug delivery business news, which we covered a big story that our always amazing associate editor Sean Hooley wrote with interviewing Dexcom CEO Kevin Sayer, and of course we got our pharma industry sites, drug discovery and development and pharmaceutical processing world. But definitely for like all things medtech, go to massdevice.com. Check out MDO. That's where we do our deeper dives.
First, I want to introduce our sponsor, BMP Medical. I had a chance to speak with Ed Kangas. Ed is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at BMP. Ed, tell us a bit about BMP.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, BMP Medical is a third-generation family-owned business with 43 years of experience in the plastics manufacturing industry supporting original equipment manufacturers. We're ISO 13485, we're FDA registered and Medicare accredited. Our customers look to us to provide production support in plastics injection molding, injection blow molding, two-shot molding, and insert molding. The markets we support are primarily the medical device, diagnostics, and life science markets. Our job at BMP Medical is to take our customers' concepts to production and finally to a finished goods state. Our goals are to deliver programs that help accelerate their go-to-market success. Over the past year, we've had the privilege of partnering with the company to support the manufacturing of a sample collection device to aid in identifying COVID-19. We're incredibly proud that the solutions we provide on a day-to-day basis can help improve patient lives.
Well, Sean Salmon, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Tom. Happy to be here.
Great to have you here. The diabetes business at Medtronic has been, I think, one of the more actives on the acquisition front. And I want to understand sort of how those different pieces fit into the larger puzzle. But before we go there, I'd love to just learn a little bit how you found your way into the medtech industry. You've been here for quite a while.
Yeah, it's more than 30 years, I think now. I kind of lose count, but it was by accident, like literally by accident. I was way back in college. I was trying to be an athlete in college, and I wound up getting injured and wound up on the table, getting my ankle operated on, reconstructed, and I just got really fascinated with the whole space of healthcare. And I guess I maintain my pre-med status even now, but I was going down that track until working in a academic medical environment in Boston. That's where I'd gone to school. And I just was sort of horrified by what that side of medicine was really like, but got fascinated by technology and didn't want to go to medical school. I wound up becoming a clinical specialist in the field and worked my way through the sales ranks and into marketing jobs. Started out with the pioneering balloon angioplasty company way back in the day, a company called USCI. It was part of CR Bard. Then I worked to try to convince them to get into different areas of medicine, including this novel idea of putting a piece of metal into the coronary artery to hold it open when you tear it. Kind of performative when I was working in the hospital side of things. I'd spent too many times riding on the chest of a patient down to the OR when the balloon would tear the artery and you need to repair it.
Wow.
But couldn't convince the team at the time that was a good idea. So I wound up going to Johnson & Johnson Interventional Systems, and there's a long saga from there, but really a kind of a storied history of just this remarkable progress in the area of minimally invasive technology to treat coronary conditions, which I had a personal connection to. My grandfather died of the disease. My grandmother had it. So yeah, like a lot of people, you find your way in there.
Wow.
Maybe 10 years into that career, I decided I probably should know something about business. Went off and learned that, and did a startup company, worked in the pharmaceutical industry for a little while too, and advertising. So I learned a lot about a whole bunch of disease conditions, but sort of the background of all the risk factors. Hypertension, diabetes is one of the products areas I worked in, dyslipidemia. But I've spent the last 17 years at Medtronic, mostly on the cardiovascular side, which I still do some of that. And, of course, running the diabetes business now. So it's been just a remarkable, rewarding career. And I just get excited going to work every day. There's something more that we can do.
That's great. Can't ask for much more than that. I wasn't going to bring up our college connection, but you mentioned college. I went to BU. I think we overlap by a year or two. What sport were you playing there where you got injured?
Well, I was trying to be a track athlete, but truth of the matter is I was not good at any of my best events. They tried to make me a decathlete, and I think I kind of peaked in high school and it was over from there. But
that's all right. Not a lot of money in track, I guess, either. So
that's true.
You didn't miss out on a lucrative BU hockey career, but or pro hockey career. But that's a great summation, and it's interesting that you and I think it's frequent in medical devices where you see folks enter the clinical side first and then decide to pivot. Do you feel you're tapping into some of the same energy that you were tapping into when you're in a hospital treating patients? Is there that same sort of caring for patients in what you do now?
No, I think there's really no replacement for having that connection to what the real world's about. And, just seeing the bad things that can happen and the wonderful things that can happen in healthcare, I think just keep you grounded about what matters. I'll remember forever when you see like those family members wringing their hands in fear when their loved ones on the table getting treated. And, it's a really, really rewarding situation where they all relax and the patient comes through and does really well. And the opposite's true also. If something bad happens, there are complications there. But it personalizes a lot of what that's about. So as you're driving through all of the motivating reasons why you want to get a team aligned to do something in medtech, I think having that real kind of connection to what matters and just keeping yourself grounded in that every day. And in the diabetes business, it's a little different because hopefully if we're doing our job right, they're never going to get there. We don't want them at the end of those cardiovascular complications that, I spent most of my career being involved with. But I think it's in a similar way, just having that understanding and empathy for what somebody living with this condition has to go through. It's just different than all the stuff you learn in business school, right?
Absolutely. But I do think that the diabetes community perhaps is the one that is most closely connected to medtech, and in that the patients there are so active in their care. They're such strong advocates, literally, track clinical trials and want to know when products are coming out. It's obviously essential to them in every definition of the term. What is that like for you leading this group, knowing that you're serving such a passionate and an invested population?
Well, Tom, I think that's absolutely motivating to me to know that you've got this community that's so involved, so engaged, and, really rooting for success all the way around. And they have high standards and they're pushing the boundaries for all of the things that are in the way of getting to those technologies. But I'd say that's a vocal group, an important group, typically in the type 1 space. And you find a complete apathetic population in type 2 where you kind of go through this cascade of failures before you get to insulin. You're at the end of the line. By then, a lot of the healthcare practitioners and the patients themselves have sort of given up hope that they can change their fate. And there's just a lot of just awareness issues, and even insulin itself is that kind of end of the line drug is viewed as almost like a failure for everyone. And the doctor didn't get the patient convinced, they made bad choices. And that's a mischaracterization too, because you can do so much better by having that insulin therapy earlier in the course of the disease, in type 2. So it's all over the place. And I think what I've learned about diabetes is that it's a very personal disease and a very different experience for everybody who lives with it, no matter what type you have, whether it's gestational or if you've got, type 1 or type 2. There's just very, very different experiences. And when we think about innovation for services or products, we have to be really clear about, what we're doing for whom in that pursuit. So it's, I think it's easy to characterize a market like that as, one thing or another thing, but it's a lot of things, which makes it both interesting and difficult.
Good point. So let's talk about how that population and your understanding of that population, how that has sort of informed your strategy and Medtronic strategy for diabetes. As I mentioned up at the top, you've made some strategic acquisitions in recent years, Neutrino and Clue. Let's kind of walk through a few of the acquisitions and how they fit into your portfolio. Let's take a quick break from this conversation with Sean Salmon to visit again with our episode sponsor, BMP Medical. I'm here with Ed Kangas. Ed, again, is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at BMP. Ed, I understand BMP is working out of a new facility. Tell me about it.
Sure, Tom. In 2019, we moved into a newly renovated 80,000 square foot manufacturing facility with an additional 20,000 square feet of expansion space in support of our growth and the growth of our partners. We support our OEM partners from product design and development, R&D tooling, mold design and development, injection molding and injection blow molding production, and clean room assembly and packaging. Currently, all our manufacturing capabilities reside in a Class A clean room. We also offer Class 7 and Class 8 assembly and packaging services. We are consistently investing capital and improving our facilities and resources to support our clients' growing critical applications. Some recent examples are ongoing implementation programs of IQMS, Medicare accreditation, and support of risk mitigation for our customers, continuous Six Sigma training, and continued equipment and technology upgrades.
That's great, Ed. And finally, how does BMP work with its medical device clients?
We're incredibly proud to be manufacturing medical components and devices that matter. Trust, relationships, and a commitment to successful outcomes are what we strive for at BMP Medical. We're proud of our history, family-driven culture, and our experienced, stable workforce. You'll always experience one-on-one personal touch when interacting with BMP Medical. Whether you are reviewing a quote, discussing validation protocols with our quality team, or reviewing mold design with our engineering team, you'll always experience a friendly, knowledgeable, and highly dedicated team. We work endlessly to provide optimal value, and the size of our company allows us to be agile to your evolving requirements. Whether you have a new device concept, an approved design, or molds to be transferred, we'll work with your team to provide the best and most efficient solutions possible.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for sponsoring this episode. For more information about BMP Medical, go to bmpmedical.com. And now let's get back into this interview with Sean Salmon of Medtronic. You've made some strategic acquisitions in recent years, Neutrino and Clue. Let's kind of walk through a few of the acquisitions and how they fit into your portfolio.
Yeah, look, I always think about strategy as sort of answering that question of what are you providing to who? And it causes you to really focus on what is it that you want to, what value proposition you will offer. You know, I think we got a little bit astray in our diabetes business. We didn't really organize around who are we trying to serve. And it was really that intensively managed patients, the ones that are using both background or basal insulin, as well as mealtime insulin. And, you know, we used to sort of decide where it is that a patient should go in their journey to get the best outcome. We had one solution. It's this pump solution. And, you know, in the United States, which is the most heavily penetrated market for type 1, that's probably what 35% of the patients actually get to this sophisticated automated insulin delivery that we've been at for multiple years, multiple decades now, and making it better and better. It's even less common in type 2s, of course. And then when you get outside the United States, maybe it's 10% of the population.
Wow.
So the vast majority of people using background and mealtime insulin are doing what they call multiple daily injections. Your ability to control your blood sugar on multiple daily injections is thwarted by a lot of things. What you eat, what activity you do, how you respond to both the food you eat, the insulin you take, all kinds of different stressors in your system, you know, things from like puberty to just mental stress. The fact that we were only offering one solution to get people to a place where their blood sugar is in a really healthy range, not too high, not too low, has both everyday implications, your mood, how you're going to be interacting with people around you, just by having excursions of blood sugar high or low. And then, of course, it gets more dangerous than that. You could wind up in the emergency room in a coma from having too low blood sugar. You have a car crash. You have a diabetic ketoacidosis, and then we go into a coma from high blood sugar. And then over time, of course, you're running really high blood sugars for a long time of the type of diabetes you have. You're damaging your small vessels. It can affect your vision, your kidney health, and your cardiovascular health over time. So it's, it's really something you got to be in that kind of normal range of blood sugar. So I say all that just as kind of pretext for what decisions we want to make. We want to focus on that right patient who was using intensive insulin management, but we want to do it in a way that we can get them great outcomes, keep that blood sugar in great control, but reduce all of the kind of decisions they have to make, the mental, physical, emotional burdens that are placed on them by this disease by simplifying things. So the first one we wanted to do was to really expand our paradigm about you should be able to choose how you want to get your insulin. I talked about how diabetes is a personal disease, right? Some people really, really don't want anyone to know they have diabetes of any type. So wearing a big clunky pump on them is not something they want the world to see. So that discretion is important. Or you could live in a country somewhere where you just don't have the healthcare resources to allocate money to such a good and sophisticated solution. You want to do something simpler. So we purchased a company called Companion Medical, which is the first and only FDA cleared smart insulin pen. It's a pen and it's an app system. And what it does is allows us to collect the information from our continuous glucose monitor, anyone, frankly, or blood glucose that you use from the finger stick, and then correlate that with how much insulin do you have, how many calories have you eaten, particular carbohydrates have you eaten. And we can give information to the patient that helps them get to better, healthier blood sugar range, but at a lower kind of technological hurdle, at a lower entry point for cost, and without adding a whole bunch of new effort or difficulty. So, right now that's important because we've already seen people whose time that they spend in a normal blood sugar range just by having this information on their phone where they can see how much insulin do I have. I have a calculator that when I eat something, you put in how many grams, how much insulin's there. And it tells you how much insulin you need to take that meal. You make fewer mistakes. So that time in the normal blood sugar range gets a lot better by about 5 points, which is that's a really big health improvement in the world. The other two acquisitions we've made, one was called Neutrino, one was called Clue. The first one, Neutrino, it's a machine learning platform, first and foremost. And it also contains the world's largest food database. So one of the problems if you have to put into your calculator, how many grams of carbohydrates you have, it's really, really hard to guess. Try that in a restaurant. It's even harder still.
Sure.
Right. So we have this really good content of what's in food. And it's not just carbohydrates. How much fat or how much protein is in that can also affect that. That's really, at the surface level, you say, okay, great, you've got this really accurate way to get information about carbs, but that's adding a lot to have somebody go and log all that food. What we also can do is using a bunch of passive and actively collected data, we can tell that you're a creature of habit. Tom, you probably eat about the same thing every day for lunch at about the same time, right? Especially during the pandemic, but in general, right?
Maybe. No comment.
So you think about, okay, well, that's interesting. Now, what do you do with that? Well, your body's pretty smart. Your pancreas is really smart. When you're about to sit down to lunch, you're thinking about eating lunch, you're already starting to take your blood sugar lower. Your pancreas does this all by itself. And we can do the same thing. We can use machine learning to predict your behaviors. We know you're likely to be eating lunch. We can start to take your background insulin to a place where your blood sugar is going lower. And then when you're eating, you could tell us what you're eating, and probably in big swaths, a kind of usual meal, a little more than I normally do, or very, very prescriptive. I'm having this baked potato and some salmon or whatever it is. We put the whole meal content in there. So that was this Neutrino acquisition that allows us to kind of know what's in food and then be able to track that you're about to do something. But what was really important is to know when somebody's doing something. And we bought this company called Clue, came out of the Stanford group, where by gesturing on a wearable, you know that somebody's eating or drinking with like 99.9% accuracy. So super accurate.
Wow.
And why that's important is if I know Tom's about to sit and eat something and I could start to take his background insulin down, I'm using an automated system. Or, you're supposed to announce your meal, take a bolus of insulin beforehand, and then correct it if you need to because you've got it wrong. Well, you think about that burden. That's hundreds of decisions that someone makes every day that we can really automate. We can know you're about to eat. We can remind you to take that insulin if you haven't done, or deliver because we can detect that you're eating. And we know where your blood sugar's headed, and we can do all kinds of things in that realm. So it's really a lot of platform technology that we're going to put into both pen and pump solutions that simplify all that complicated stuff I just talked about. So you really have to think about it. It's sort of autopilot, which is really, the kind of holy grail for this is to have this closed loop. But if you aren't interested or can't afford to go to the full automated insulin delivery system, we can still remind you to take your insulin at the right time. and drive your health outcomes even higher. We did one small study where we got about the same amount of benefit. We measured something called A1C, which is like a summary report card at the end of the quarter. It tells you how well did you do at managing your blood sugar. And with just reminding people to bolus, we get about the same improvement as we did by automating that insulin with the pump to begin with. So really a big health improvement. And, this kind of leadership on that next wave of things, we've really pioneered a lot of things in this business. Continuous glucose monitors were invented here. Really the perfection of that insulin delivery in an automated way was done here. And I think this is the next level where we just take it to just more and more anticipation, understanding what's there and taking care of it in the background and doing it in a way that's not obtrusive, that really gets people to live their life the way they want to and kind of forget about their numbers and their diabetes as much as they possibly can.
Can't imagine how exhausting that level of management must be, as you said, making hundreds of decisions a day that are literally critical decisions. How difficult has it been to integrate all those different technologies into your business? Did they come with employees and cultures that you had to, or were you just buying the devices themselves and fitting them into what you had?
No, look, when you buy companies, you don't ever buy people. You have to earn that. Right? So there's
good point.
You buy technology, you buy patents, and then the integrations. I'm glad you asked about that because it's really important that you weave that into a fabric that keeps what's special about what you bring into the company, but you layer it in the context of bigger strategy that you're trying to go forward with. And I've had a lot of experience in a number of different acquisitions over the years, and I think what always works well is when we're just upfront about what role are you playing and what does good look like and how do you fit into the big picture, and just constantly remind everybody about how that all works. But you don't go in and just sort of just take the products and leave the people behind. You need them. So I'd say they've been very, very seamless, bringing all these acquisitions in, because I think people see the vision of what we're trying to do. You talked about the activated community. Everybody knows that this meal handling thing is like the third rail of diabetes. It's so difficult. It's such a stress point for people. So we put this vision together of how these components fit into it. It's very motivating. People really see it right away and say, this is something I want to be involved in. So it's been really fun.
You put more effort into communicating with your patient community than perhaps other businesses do.
Well, it's a good question. I mean, the other businesses I work in, the cardiovascular side, a lot of them are the patient's asleep on the table. OR. Nobody's talking to that patient.
Right.
But here, it's a lifelong relationship that you're hoping to build, where you go through this devastating period where somebody is newly diagnosed, or your child is newly diagnosed, or you've had a cardiac event in the type 2 world and find out that you have this disease you need to manage. And you really want to try to get people through those areas of fear and get them to be successful in managing this disease that can feel very random. You could eat the same thing 2 days in a row and a totally different reaction to that food. And it's just frustrating, right? So we try to get people onboarded in a very personalized way, get them on the technology, support them through their whole journey to better and better health. And that takes a constant amount of communication with them directly through people they trust too. There's a lot of very vocal people in the community who are going to make a mistake. They're going to amplify that. If you do something that's great for a patient, they're going to amplify that too. So I think it's really, we are in the world of trust. Somebody's going to trust you with their disease, trust you that you've got something that's going to help them, trust you that you're going to get them through the friction points, the successes that they're seeking. And it could be simple things like even working through insurance problems that may pop up in a given country. And we call that in totality the experience that we're trying to really make better. Some of that's product related, some of it's not product related. And really the two core parts of our strategy are to drive innovation in product and services that are just at that better and better experience to make hopefully their disease fade into the background as much as it possibly can.
That's a great objective. Let's talk a bit about your automated insulin delivery system, the MiniMed 780G. I know you've released it in Europe. There's been a slowdown at the FDA. Give us an update on that.
Sure. Yeah, we have part of it in the US already. We have something called the 770G, which is the same hardware platform. And what that does is it adds a lot of the connectivity features that were not there in the prior generations of product. Specifically that you can now see your insulin data and your CGM data on your phone, and you can share that information with another caregiver. You can also upload the reports automatically in the background to your healthcare provider. So you don't have to hook up to a computer and download stuff on your office visits. So it really makes that workflow a lot better. And of course, it's been helpful to have that automation of uploading in the middle of this COVID environment where nobody wants to have unnecessary healthcare exposure. So it really helped telemedicine.
Sure.
Our age indication goes down to the youngest for a pump all the way down to age 2, all the way through, the full life cycle patient. But that same hardware platform and that same ability with connectivity allows us to upgrade the algorithm, which is 780. And the difference between 770 and 780 is primarily, two things really. It's that you could set your normal blood glucose target lower than any other device in the market, including our 770. We can set it at 100, which is, that's what you and I have, normal blood sugar as a kind of target value. And you can do that without risking putting people in low blood sugar. So that's really a big deal. People want to have a lower target. They want to be able to have as good a blood sugar control as they possibly can. The other thing it does is it starts to get toward that meal automation I was talking about, where if your blood sugar is going up, we can always, every 5 minutes, we're in the background adjusting how much insulin you've got. But when you eat, we can automatically bolus if you haven't corrected enough. For example, you haven't pre-bolused soon enough, or you haven't given enough insulin. We see the blood sugar going up, it automatically corrects that. Mm-hmm. It does that without having to tell you anything. It just does it in the background. It can do that every 5 minutes. So we see the trend of where you're going, and we know where the algorithm knows what's going to happen, and it automatically does that. So it's very forgiving in that way. And the kind of report card you get on that is how well did you do keeping that patient in range? And, we're at 80%, both in the clinical trial now. We just had a publication of our post-market experience. That's really remarkable to be in range that often. That's even before we get to the automation and meal handling. So we think we're getting closer and closer to that kind of nirvana of closing the loop. And, 780 has just been phenomenal in Europe. It's really, really done exceptionally well. It's, I get to be in these Facebook groups and you can see people who post their phone shot, their screenshot about their time in range, and
that's great.
90%, 100%. And it's just life changing. It really is. You see these people they've been living the disease for 30 years and they've never had such good control. And not only that, it's been so easy. They don't have to do anything to do that. It's just taking care of it in the background. And, it is truly remarkable how these devices can help people just feel successful in managing their chronic disease.
So what is it you need from the FDA to release it in the US?
We filed it with the FDA, so we're just waiting for it.
Okay.
Honestly, the FDA has been crushed. This particular division, I think it's OHT7, it's the particular flavor of the FDA, has had the dual purpose of COVID diagnostics on top of the diabetes technology. So the entire industry has really been in waiting mode because the obvious priority has been COVID. So the medical reviewers in particular who are, pouring through the clinical data that backs up the device we've already submitted, that's really the constraint. So we're just waiting for that to come through.
One of the more intriguing things about your business, I thought, was the partnership with Blackstone, the private equity group coming in. Hadn't really seen something like that before, therefore wasn't quite sure what to read into it. Does the signal is a buyout happening? Is there a spin out? Talk to me about that relationship. What is it and what will it provide for Medtronic?
Medtronic has got this embarrassment of riches issue. Right? So in addition to the diabetes business, I oversee the heat business, the cardiovascular portfolio. And we have so many incredible ideas that we can invest in. We can do anything, but we can't do everything. Mm-hmm. So how do you pick the right things to invest in across your enterprise, and make sure that you're making the best use of your capital? How do you allocate that from your P&L, from your balance sheet, or in this case, through Blackstone's money? And Blackstone, this partnership with us, is helping us to, while we're working on driving some more near-term programs with our P&L dollars. And we used our balance sheet. We just talked about 3 things we did with the balance sheet to add capabilities, to build technologies out. Blackstone's something in the middle where you're using your same team, their money on riskier projects that are a little bit longer term. So what it means for us is we can kind of drive near-term projects and really disruptive things that you may not have invested in because you have to compete for resources across an enterprise or because the risk profile is a little higher. But you're doing that with your own people. So when you asked me about the integration after an acquisition, every one of those slows you down. You have to kind of rebuild everything. It's fundamentally broken when you buy it because you have to fit it into all your systems and all the sophistication of that. So you're not really integrating those technologies. And from a kind of financial lens, you think about it. The return you get on the capital you invest in off your P&L, if it's successful, is always the highest. It's the best investment you can make. But, your tolerance for failure there is pretty low. You want to make sure that you're doing maybe safer bets. When you buy big acquisitions, your return on capital for that is pretty diluted because you're waiting to de-risk everything. You don't want to take big risks. You tend to spend a lot of capital there. This is something in between where it's de-risked because it's your people, but still sufficiently risky. And you built in a lot of things. So that return on capital is somewhere in that middle. It is different. We don't use this a lot in medtech, but it's been commonly done in the pharma industry.
That's right.
Where they're taking phase 3 trials, for example, where it's a bigger trial, much bigger bet. And do you want to make that bet with your own capital or somebody else's? So yeah, it's a financial instrument, but at the same time, it's really, I think, an incredible way of allocating capital that gets the best of both worlds, where you can take bigger risks. Our partner gets really successful. Our incentives are in line. If we do really well with these programs, they're going to make a great return. And we're going to get things that we may not have invested in because it's taking a bigger risk.
It's a great point about pharma, and that is something we have seen there. But I haven't, maybe I missed it. Is Blackstone working on or connected with specific projects or products? I got the sense it was rather open-ended.
It's very defined. So,
okay.
There are 4 programs that we have joint steering committee meetings, and
okay,
they're on the journey with us. They're not just a passive financial investor. They're there with us, making these decisions, walking through all the ups and downs of product development. So yeah, it's been a good partnership.
Excellent. Well, I guess this kind of relates to my final question. Is Medtronic and diabetes for the long haul?
Yeah, look, we've got a really exciting opportunity in front of us. This is a very large market with lots of unmet needs, rapid growth. Now, I'm not sure we played it right for the last couple of years, if I'm honest with you, but I really think we've got the team in place. We've got the right investments from all those flavors of capital allocation discussed, and just a patient population at the other end of this that really deserves a better life. It's certainly not for this faint-hearted. This is a very difficult market. It moves fast, but it's exciting, and things we can do here are really, really rewarding too.
Excellent. Well, it's I'm grateful you took time to explain all that to us on the podcast. Sean, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right, Chris Newmarker, now is the time for us to be super social. How can folks find you on social media?
I'm on LinkedIn, Chris Newmarker, just like a Newmarker, and you can find me on Twitter as well at Newmarker. Always happy to talk about what's going on in medtech.
Lots going on, and I am on Twitter at MedTechTom, and you can find me on LinkedIn, Tom Salemi, SALEMI. Please do use those tags when you share this podcast episode, and please do share this podcast episode on those social media channels. And please do, what do we want them to do, Chris?
Like, follow, subscribe.
That's right. Please do subscribe. That's going to be on the back of our Device Talks weekly t-shirt when we get it. Like, follow, subscribe.
I tell you, man, when we do a real Device Talks event next year, when we do a real Device Talks show next year, you watch out. Me and Tom are going to have t-shirts that say subscribe on the back.
That's right.
We're going to do it, man. You got to buy the merch.
If our CEO, Scott, is listening, Scott, we need a t-shirt cannon. Can we put that in the budget? Chris and I need to fire t-shirts into the audience.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Would that be fun?
I could do it. Sounds good.
All right. So yes, a t-shirt cannon is a must, but
I will not wear a costume, Tom. I will not wear a costume.
we'll negotiate that. It's a negotiation. We'll talk about that.
Here's your costume bonus, Chris.
Please do
vacation, man.
Please do subscribe to the podcast on the aforementioned channels, and of course, tune in next week. We'll have another great episode. Actually, no, wait a minute. I keep doing that. Next week we will have another great episode. There will be no Newmarkers Newsmakers because I'll be on vacation, but we do have a couple of great interviews lined up already, including one blast from the past, one of our very first golden hits, and a new interview that I did with Andy Deshwami of Koya Medical. So you'll get your podcast next week, folks. Don't worry about it. And we'll be back with Newmarkers Newsmakers in 2 weeks.
Yes. So we're going to close out with you playing like a vacation sound, peaceful vacation sound, ocean waves, deer sipping out of a stream, bubbling stream. There'll
be no sound because frankly, I'm out of time and I don't want to go looking for sound. So
all right.
let's just make a whooshing sound.
There we go. Have a peaceful summer, everybody. Take care.